Okay, this video is to introduce us to the new equation that we're going to be using in class for momentum. Momentum is going to be shown with the variable p, so let's go ahead and write this, momentum. And we're going to put a p here. And momentum is measured in kilograms times meters per second. If we were to write out the whole equation for momentum, it would be p equals mass times velocity, where the mass is where we're getting the kilograms in this unit, and then the velocity is where we're getting the meters per second. Pretty straightforward equation. We're just going to multiply the mass times the velocity to find our momentum for these different objects. It's going to be important to note that because momentum is dependent on mass and velocity, we can make some basic observations here for objects that have a big mass. If you have a big mass, then you're going to end up with a big momentum. Because if you increase this value for mass, you're going to increase the value for momentum. Likewise, if you have a big velocity, then you're going to end up with a big momentum as well. And we'll see in some of these word problems as we go through them, there's just a few that we're going to do that objects with a big mass or a big velocity will end up with big momentums. And so if you look at objects that may be even going slow, if they have a low velocity but they have a big mass, then they're going to still have a big momentum. Let's take a look at a word problem and see how that looks. So this one says a 0.5 kilogram bullet is fired at 200 meters per second. So the 200 meters per second here is a velocity, and we know that the 0.5 kilograms here is the mass, and we're trying to find momentum. So just going through the guess method here for you, the mass is 0.5 kilograms. The velocity is 200 meters per second. So you can see the velocity is very big, 200 meters per second, and we're trying to find momentum. So the equation for momentum is mass times velocity. If we replace this with our values, it would be 0.5 kilograms times 200 meters per second. And that's going to give us a momentum of 100 kilograms times meters per second is our answer for how much momentum this bullet had. So even though it had a small mass, because it had a large velocity, we still ended up with a large momentum. So this is about as straightforward as the problems can get, where you're just multiplying the mass times the velocity to find how much momentum an object had. Now if we look at this example here with a truck, it says that a truck is traveling at 20 meters per second. This is velocity. They tell you the amount of momentum here, so this is our P, the momentum, and they want to know how much mass we have. So just putting out all the stuff we have for this equation, it would be velocity equals 20 meters per second, that the mass is equal to 200, or the momentum, sorry, is equal to 200. Change that to a P. And we're trying to find the mass. Now if you look at the equation here, the equation that we have is momentum equals mass times velocity. And if we replace this with our values we have, so 200 for P, for momentum, and then for mass, we don't know that yet, we're trying to find it, and then the velocity is going to be 20 meters per second. Since we're multiplying by 20, we can divide by 20 on both sides, and 20 divided by 20 is 1, and you end up with mass is equal to 200 divided by 20, so the mass in this case is going to be 10 kilograms. So just a really simple one-step pre-algebra hurdle for you here. You just have to divide the 20 to the other side and find out that the mass is 10 here. This is a different iteration of this problem, right? Because now we're not able to just multiply to find our answer. We're using the same equation, but we're having to move a variable velocity over to the other side to find how much mass this object had. We can do the same thing to find velocity of something. So let's take a look at this one. It says that there's a big boy with a mass of 500 kilograms. So this is a mass. And it has a momentum of 1,000 kilograms times meters per second. That's your P. And they want the velocity. So in this problem, they've given you the mass. They've given you the momentum. Notice here, because it is a large object, 500 kilograms, it has a large momentum. And when we're trying to find velocity, we'll use the same equation for momentum, mass times velocity. We know P, the momentum, is 1,000, so we'll put 1,000 over here. We know the mass is 500, and we know that the velocity is what we're looking for. Again, we're multiplying by 500, so to get the velocity by itself, we have to divide 500 to both sides. And 500 divided by 500 is 1, and you end up with velocity is equal to 1,000 divided by 500, which is 2 meters per second. So these three examples are the type of problems we'll be working on in class. Pretty straightforward. We're either going to be multiplying to find momentum, or if we're trying to find mass or velocity, we're going to have to divide the unknown variable to the other side to isolate what we're looking for. And then make sure that you're showing your units, and in class we'll go over little tricks that you can use to help you remember how to move things around for this equation here. But make sure you watch the video. It's important as we have these going forward, and it'll help you get prepared for class.